Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyle, community and neighborhoods. And now from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Good morning and welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. Dorothy, we, after many shows, not real estate related, we get a chance to swing back to one of my favorite topics.
Yes.
And in doing so, we get to do it with one of my favorite people, Tim Skibitsky, who is the owner of Family First Home Inspection Services. In our quirky real estate market, we have so many moving parts that go on with the purchase and or the sale of property these days. And both sellers and buyers are, I don't want to say on edge, but they really want to be able to achieve their goals. And the market has made it sometimes difficult where there's not as much of a balance as we would like. And Tim is usually the first phone call I make, or other brokers may make, after they've procured an offer or a contract on a home for their buyers, which is, I guess we can start, Tim, going into that direction with buyers and sellers because there's a different mentality. But even before I do that, your credentials are very impressive, and many times I speak to clients who don't know you, and I explain to them that I'm going to call you for an inspection. And I tell them you're a mechanical engineer and a licensed contractor. It's pretty heady stuff, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, my training isn't really atypical of what a home inspector is. Correct.
So you started Family First in just before COVID, sometime in 2019.
Correct. Yeah.
But it was a career. It was a career pivot for you, wasn't it?
Yeah. For 20 years, I had been a general contractor with a business up in Sanford, and a home inspection came up mainly because my parents had moved from North Carolina to South Carolina, and the inspection they got resulted in a lot of extra expenses for them because it wasn't done properly.
Right.
And reading through the report, I started looking at it and it's like, this is something I could do. Looked into the process of getting it, and since I am an engineer, since I do have my general contracting license, I was pre-qualified to take the state exam to get an inspection license.
Oh, so you didn't have to go through the CE?
No, I didn't have to do any of the pre-education training because I had already had a background in the field. Took the test, passed the test, and 3 weeks later had my inspection license and kind of jumped right into it.
Well, your logo, it tells a story. Within 5 years, you've been nominated for Best of the Pines, and even though I know that's a advertising vehicle and this and that popularity contest, but the thing that's impressive is it's not just 1 year, it's almost every year.
Correct.
And it's not about who comes in first place, but who's recognized by the broker population and the public at large. But I have a feeling that most of your votes come from brokers that you've worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember our conversation when you first started, because your skill set was so far above everyone else, and you said something which I agreed with. You said, Bill, I'm just going to focus on a limited number of brokers. I don't need to have 40 brokers that I'm working with, right? You want to cull it down and be consistent with them?
Yeah, exactly. My construction business, I had over 100 plus employees. And it was one chaos after another. And what I like about the home inspection business is I'm in control of everything. It's me.
Right.
And yeah, I have a core group of realtors that I work very closely with. They've kept me very busy.
Good.
They call me all sorts of questions just because with my background, I'm able to field structural questions, a lot of different testings from radon all the way down to pool inspections. So kind of almost a one-stop shop.
Right.
And what I pride myself in is the fact that even though I'm a one-man operation, the Best of the Pines this past year I did win it. I beat out multi-inspector groups that obviously had probably performed more inspections throughout the year, but I guess my attention to detail, my desire to keep my clients satisfied,
Yep.
has resulted in the votes from not just the realtors but also my clients.
You talk about the independence you had by pivoting, but you also had a growing family, 3 kids.
Yes.
And you, so part of it was a lifestyle move as well?
Quite a bit, yeah. It was too much time working with the construction business, which was all throughout the state, and I'd hit that point in my life where I needed to find focus. I have a 14-year-old daughter, 11-year-old son, a 7-year-old son, and it was spending more time with them, building a stronger relationship, because I didn't want to miss out on anything, because I was focused on trying to support them, and I realized supporting them is not just financial, but it's also emotional.
Right.
And so, have put a great deal of time and effort into making sure I'm there for them when they need it.
Yeah. I've had the pleasure of knowing your kids and actually having your daughter come on one of our shows a few Thanksgivings ago, and
Yep.
she fought through it, and she did fine, but she fought through it, and,
Yeah.
and you were sitting over here watching her, and probably hoping and praying that she got through. She was sitting right here.
Yep.
And by the end of the show, I think she started to feel a little more comfortable, a little more confident in herself. You talk about attention to detail, and can you give us an overview for people who may be looking for a home inspector, the scope of what your home inspections cover?
From the state standpoint, we go from the roof to the crawl space basement and go through all the systems of the house.
Right.
It is a visual inspection, but it's trying to find deficiencies. Where I take the extra time and pride, I feel, is the fact that I'm there to tell the client exactly what they're buying or what they're selling. It's not up to me to determine whether the issue is a big issue or a little one. It's to identify all the issues. And that's where I take the time to document everything, and then afterwards having the detailed discussion with the client, because of my background, able to explain to them what the issues are, how I would repair, not repair, items like that, so that when they move into the house, the ultimate goal is they're moving in and creating happy memories, not sad memories because this just broke or I didn't know this was going on and stuff like that. A home is where we live, but it's also where we raise our families, where we create bonds and happiness and joy, and to know what you're walking into. And in our area, a lot of times these families don't even see the houses until they actually have bought the houses.
Yes.
And so I'm a vehicle, an arm to make sure that they fully understand what they're investing in. And a lot of people, this is the biggest thing we spend. 30 years we're paying this off, and you want to make sure that you're doing it on something that you're not having to go find more money on because it had multiple issues.
One of the greatest assets, in my opinion, that you bring to the table is how articulate you are when you speak to our clients. How many times have you done inspections for me where I've asked you to speak directly to the client, or I've asked my client to call you?
Mm-hmm.
And you must be like a therapist, because after they speak to you, they say they feel better. And I go, what did I miss? Because sometimes reports read more inflammatory than they are in actuality.
Correct. Yeah.
And is that most of the coaching you do when you're explaining? But do you explain to them the requirements that a home inspector has, how they write a report, and the language that they use?
It is part of that discussion. The state of North Carolina, since we are governed by the State Fire Marshal's agency, has specific guidelines on how we are supposed to write the report because we are a generalist. Like you said, to me, the most valuable component of the inspection is the time when the physical inspection stops, but the description of what was found starts. Most people don't have a background in construction. Most people aren't extremely mechanically inclined. So when you see something written in a report, for example, a light bulb could not work. You know, we're told to say the bulb could be burnt out or it could be a severe electrical issue. You know, explaining to the client exactly what the issues are and how to potentially resolve them, or even, you know, from a coaching standpoint of how to prevent it from happening in the future from like a general house maintenance standpoint.
Right.
You know, clean your gutters, you know, make sure water's not standing next to the foundation, you know, certain things like that. It normalizes that report to where it doesn't become this 80-page, you know, is this house a lemon, to an 80-page instructional booklet on what I need to do to keep this house for another 35 years.
Yeah. Ever since the end of COVID, we've seen real estate prices climb quite a bit in a very short period of time. And more recently, we've seen interest rates climb. Having said that, buyers are really up against it because they're paying arguably the highest prices, or at least top dollar in Moore County these days. So their expectation is that, well, if these things are wrong, we're going to ask the seller to fix them. Well, that's not what the contract says. The contract says any property in the state of North Carolina, if it is a ratified contract, it conveys an as-is condition. That's what the contract says. In the real world, you know, I mean, sellers and buyers get together and, you know, over 90% of the cases, and they work through some of the repairs. But the expectation level of the buyer is maybe higher than it's ever been. And so we try to coach our clients that the seller can agree, cannot agree, can compromise. And they go, okay, fine, no problem, until they read the report, right? Everyone's very cool and smooth about it until they read the report. And they go, well, this needs to be fixed. And one of the things you do so well is you separate the what I call the nickel and dime repairs from the quarter and $half repairs. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, like I said, I try to identify everything, but when talking to the clients, it's zeroing in on the critical items that need to be taken care of.
Yeah.
You know, I classify these items when talking with the clients into three categories. Category one is a general maintenance item that a handyman, you know, a service trade person can come in and fix real quick. Item two would be, hey, these are items that really need to be identified, because if they're not identified, then they go to item three, which is we probably should go across the street and talk about how much you love this property because you're inheriting something that is very bad. Thank God in 5 years I've been doing this, I've only had that number three item probably less than a dozen times. But the number two items is really where I try to spend my time with the clients so they fully understand not just the magnitude of what the issue is, but how to correctively repair it. Because a lot of times a big issue can be fixed inexpensively. You know, it's, you know, I had that discussion the other day about an attic issue with the way rafters were installed.
Right.
And it's, oh no, is the roof going to collapse? No, the house has been here for a while. It's not going to collapse. But if you don't fix this, it could create issues. And, well, how do I fix this? All you got to do is put some boards across to support it. Oh, yeah, a general contractor or a handyman could fix this in a day.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that doesn't sound so horrible anymore.
Yeah.
And it's trying to get them to understand that from that level.
You remind me of a inspection that you did in Sanford a couple of months ago for a home that was not even under contract. And the couple are moving here from Texas, and you actually helped their daughter and son-in-law with their home. But the listing agent on the home was good enough to get us permission to do a home inspection on the home prior to placing an offer. The home was priced in the 600s. It was priced as if it were in move-in condition. And because they didn't have a pre-listing inspection, my clients who have been around the block were a little bit spooked. And they weren't going to put any due diligence money down. They weren't going to do anything until they had more information about the property, which begs a question which we'll come back in the second set and talk about. Why don't more sellers who have older homes, who are trying to capitalize on the market appreciation, take the time to spend the $500 to $800 to do a pre-listing inspection to give the buyers a little more peace of mind?
There's two inspections that always blow my mind that people skip: the pre-listing on a middle older house,
Right.
and then new construction inspections. Those
Yes.
two, to me, just
Yep.
I'm dumbfounded about it, because obviously an older house is going to have issues. To me, knowing what the issues are and bringing them to the table before you get an offer
Yeah.
makes that negotiation so much easier.
Right.
And then the new home side, it's like I tell my clients all the time: the builder is going to respond to your repair request if he doesn't have your money. The minute he has your money and now you try to do a warranty request, they're not going to be so responsive, because now you're taking money from them every time they come back and try to fix something.
Right.
And at the end of the day, even on new construction, it's still built by humans. There's human aspect in it, and we're all making errors every day.
Right.
And so to just assume that you're buying a brand new house doesn't mean
Right.
it's not going to have its issues.
Let's come back in the second set. I want to pursue this conversation about buyer confidence in a home and sellers who don't take the time, not only to help the buyer feel more comfortable, but to prepare the seller for what they have and what they're selling. It drives me crazy as well. My guest is Tim Skibitsky. He is a very well-known and respected home inspector in Moore County, also in Lee County, I should say, and Family First is the name of his company. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our second set of All Things Moore County. Our guest for the hour is Tim Skibitsky, home inspector, Family First Home Inspection Services. Tim, we were talking at the end of the first set about older homes that don't get pre-listing inspections, and new construction homes where buyers don't feel the need to have one. Let's go back to the first one, the older homes. So we go back to that couple in Sanford who looked at this home. They got permission to do the home inspection, and to them, it was worth the $600 or $700 that it cost to decide whether or not they were going to put up $5,000 or $10,000 of non-refundable money. The listing agent did not do the sellers a favor by not insisting on them having one, because if they had, they may not have had to call you. And as it turns out, do you recall that house and that conversation? Do you?
Yeah, I really do. There was, there were a lot of on the inside of the home, aesthetic issues, that you see in a standard older house.
Yeah.
Nothing horrible.
Right.
The entertainment came when I got deep into the crawl space, and there was fungal growth, damaged trusses, items like that. That all of a sudden it became I've got a bunch of weekend projects to now I have to go hire a professional if I buy this house to figure out how to make sure my floors don't collapse.
Right. And I'm sure the seller did not have knowledge of it, and they probably filled out their property disclosure accordingly. But the property disclosure is not a lie detector test.
Mm-hmm.
It's what do the sellers know to the best of their knowledge? How many sellers go into their own crawl space?
Well, it's outside of people opening the door if they have a big enough space and storing things in there, which they shouldn't do to
Right.
begin with.
Right.
Yeah, it's very rare that, including myself, that you sit there on a Saturday afternoon when the sun's out and it's beautiful, say, you know what, I'm going to climb into my crawl space
Yeah,
and
let's
see
go
what's
down
going
and
on.
yeah, let's check things out.
Yeah.
So the seller is not being, in that case, was not being guided properly. It could have been that the list agent had suggested it and they said no.
Mm-hmm.
But I will venture to say that most list agents will not fight it. They want to be people pleasers and they don't want to upset the seller. Well, that house is still on the market for sale.
Yeah.
And they didn't do their work up front to make it happen more quickly. As far as the new construction goes, we're usually in Moore County now talking about young buyers who are buying some of the many different new construction homes being built in different subdivisions. And they think, oh, it's brand spanking new, and let's move in, and hey, well, we feel good. But you did one in Mid-South not too long ago, and we were able to take that punch list from a new construction home and present it to the builder and ask them to identify and address all those items prior to closing, which they did. They don't like builders don't necessarily like home inspectors because they'll say, well, they don't understand the code or this or that. But and you probably don't get treated like when they see you coming. They don't like say, hey, you want to have a steak and a beer?
Yeah, not getting too many high fives.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. But there were things that needed to be done to be tweaked because even in new construction homes, like you said, people make mistakes.
Well, and a lot of times, especially on the new construction, the clients are walking through the house and envisioning where they're putting this or where to hang these pictures and, how much fun they're going to have in the backyard. And the problem is, hey, the hot water heater was installed incorrectly or the handles on the sink were put back, flip-flopped or, down to the floors creaking and the subfloor wasn't attached properly. There's things that people just don't understand and know, but the minute you move into the house, you're now dealing with it. And to try to get the builder to come back when you want them to come back is very difficult because now you've got to change your schedule and your life to coordinate around them trying to get people. And it's just peace of mind prior to moving in. And like you said, everybody knows the blue tape walkthrough that the realtors do. Adding the home inspection to the blue tape is probably a very sound investment.
Yeah. We have a situation with a couple right now who had a house fire a week ago. It was on WRAL News. And they will be out of their home for 8 to 12 months in Southern Pines. And they are opting to purchase a home rather than renting a home. And they have a year and a half, 19-month-old. They're in a situation where they're purchasing a home, new construction home, but they're asking for a buyer possession. Because they've been living with in-laws or this or that as soon as they can. We still want to do a home inspection on the home. Now, once they move in under a buyer possession, that's out of you can do the home inspection, but they've accepted the property. But on a new construction home, they have a warranty. They can come back in month 10 or 11 with the punch list.
Correct. Yeah.
And then have the builder address it at that point in time. And that's what we're going to do. So I have to set that up with you. I mean, there's so many different ways to skin the cat, but that's an unusual situation. The experience and the perspective that you have and your background really does give you a chance to see a broader playing field than people who get into the business quickly, because the real estate market's hot. The same with real estate people. Everybody thinks, oh, this is where I'm going to gravitate. But knowing how to make the right calls is something that you can't put in your logo and you can't put on your business card. But the experience does matter.
Yeah, it's, and I even tell clients, as I'm going through the photos I've taken and stuff like that, they'll say, oh, what's that? And I'll tell them, I took this picture, but I need to go back and research it because it doesn't look right, but I can't say definitively whether it's right or wrong.
Right.
And yeah, with my background as a general contractor, as an engineer, the little network of friends that I've created over the years, I'm able to identify stuff and hopefully stay away from incorrect identifications so that the actual issues that need to be addressed are being addressed versus something that's not an issue that maybe a less experienced inspector might have identified as an issue is now taken away from the stuff that does need to be fixed, if that it makes sense. It's the ability to, even like you said about the new construction, understand the code and know how to apply it.
Right.
I drive around in my truck with all my code books. So that, if I see an issue with a deck or, the bolts used, the spacing, stuff like that, I can double check it before I just kind of throw it in the report. I want my report as accurate as physically possible because that's what my client is going to live off of. And if it's in there and all of a sudden you got 2 or 3 incorrectly identified issues, it brings up the question of the validity of the report itself.
I describe your report to clients as a syllabus, that some things, need attention immediately, whether it's paid by the buyer or the seller is not as important as the fact that the long list of things. I tell them this is an opportunity to bring the house up to snuff in a very short manner, and otherwise you would be caught by surprise without having this in front of you, as detailed as your reports are, and they are more detailed than some other inspectors. And so they become sometimes, for some brokers, more difficult to interpret and discuss with their client.
No, and that's very true. And that's going back to the realtors I work with and stuff. One of the things that they have always said to me is the fact that they enjoy working with me because they learn from me. And so the next time they do a transaction, they're more knowledgeable about that process. And for me, especially when I got into this, I got into it because my parents didn't know and got in trouble. It's all about education. And if I could take what I know and continue to learn and pass that on to whether it's the client, the realtors, the buyers, whoever it is, it makes a better process for all those involved.
Right.
I do continuing ed. I'll go into realtors' offices and do presentations and stuff like that on subject matters, just so that trying to get people up to speed and, not just focus on getting the signatures and getting the closing, but, making sure that they understand what they're getting into as they go through this process.
Yeah. No 2 homes are the same. No 2 inspections are the same. Can you tell me off the top of your head what percentage of inspections that you do are pre-listing versus with a contract in hand?
Unfortunately, I'd say pre-listing is only about 5%.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's the best marketing tool for a seller if the house calls for it. And an experienced agent should be able to make that call based on what they see and what they know. And it's almost like an insurance policy, so that an offer can come in with the risk that the buyer will put up with the due diligence money. If they don't, they're not going to get the kind of offers that they want. And, the expression is the more truth you have in a transaction, the better the transaction.
Well, that's is sellers. When I do it for the seller, I'll actually have buyers call me asking about items in the report because the report has been
Right.
shared,
Right.
so they understand what is going on.
Right.
And like you said, it builds that trust between the seller and the buyer, and it makes the transaction, a win-win situation for both sides, which streamlines it versus not having that. Then an inspection comes up, you have all these issues now,
Yeah.
and it becomes I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, and
Right.
someone is feeling like they're losing in the process.
Yeah. And doing a pre-listing inspection for a seller, as a listing agent, you're also helping the buyer agent, because you're educating them so they can talk more accurately with their buyers about the condition and how they want to frame their offer, right?
Well, and once again, at the end of the day, we're talking about price and money, and the seller is expecting top dollar. The buyer wants to sell for lowest dollar, and anytime those numbers change,
Right.
it becomes very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Let's come back in the third set. Our guest is Tim Skibitsky from Family First Home Inspection Services. Welcome back to our final set of All Things Moore County. Tim Skibitsky has been our guest for the whole hour. We're talking about home inspections, the process. I want to, Tim, if I can, just sort of play a game with you. Throw
Right.
a couple of words out at you and just have you freely associate. Polybutylene pipes.
First thing comes in my head is any home built in Pinehurst in 1980s. That it's a style of pipe that came in after copper
Yep.
for water distribution, and due to its reaction with chemicals within water, potentially make them brittle and they can leak. Class action lawsuits out there with regards to it. Anytime I get into Pinehurst and see a home that was built in late 80s, early 90s, I know full well once I get in the crawl space, I'm going to see the polybutylene, which is gray. For people out there, if your water pipes are gray, it's polybutylene. Does it mean it's going to fall apart? No, it just means it has a higher probability of having issues.
Okay. Federal Pacific. He knows what I'm going to say. Federal Pacific electric panel boxes.
If you have one of those, change it out.
Why?
Those are dangerous. Once again, it's most people are used to Square D, Siemens as the brand makers of their electrical panels. Federal Pacific, when they made theirs, the design of them had inherent flaws that would result in the breakers arcing, failing, and all the way down to it's impossible, actually, not impossible, let me rephrase that, extremely difficult to remove the panel cover without knocking the breakers off. And they have been linked to quite a few electrical fires to the where that you're not allowed to make them anymore.
Okay.
And those houses are probably early 80s.
Yep.
I've seen quite a
Even
bit of them in
earlier.
Southern Pines. Yeah.
Yeah. Blown seals.
That's a favorite for windows. Once again, if you're starting to get moisture, cloudiness in your window, the thermal barrier within a window most of the time is argon, and it deflects that heat that comes through, keeps the house cool, keeps the house warm. If you start seeing moisture, you start seeing cloudiness, it means your windows have lost that seal, which means they're no longer rated thermally for what they should be, and they need to be replaced. You can either replace the full window, or actually some companies can actually, depending on the style window, repair them.
Okay. Termite tunnels.
We're in Moore County. Two big things we have around here are pine needles and termites.
Okay.
Pine needles on the roof, termites down in the crawl space. Make sure you're getting your house inspected for termites, getting it treated every year. A lot of companies in the area, very good, very reputable, but The little buggers come out, they start swarming, and if you don't have that treatment, it's very expensive to repair because they will destroy floors and concrete, cinder blocks, the foundations.
Fungus, mold, or bacterial growth?
That's one of my fortes, actually. I do a lot of air sampling and stuff like that, but those items you just mentioned are the repercussions of elevated moisture.
Right.
So whether it's high humidity in the crawl space, a water leak you didn't know existed, when those start happening, that means that your wood is saturated above a relative moisture content of 20%, and they actually start deteriorating the structure of the home. Go out to the woods, flip over a piece of wood, you're going to see fungus growth. It's the same thing in a house. If moisture's there,
Okay.
it's going to grow.
Last one, SEER rating. SEER.
Oh, SEER.
SEER rating.
It's kind of that's the rating of the HVAC system that you're working with. Obviously, newer units today have a higher SEER. You can buy different levels. The government has a mandate now. Older units, two things to pay attention to is the SEER rating, which is their efficiency, how much electricity they use.
Right.
The other issue is the refrigerant in there. Older units, you can't, it's very expensive to recharge them because they don't make the refrigerant anymore because it's environmentally unfriendly.
Right.
Modern units, I tell people if your unit's over 10, 12 years old, if you start having issues and it starts getting up to $2,000 to $3,000, it's cheaper in the long run to replace the unit. You'll save it on the energy, you'll save it on the repairs than it is to try to make the dinosaur continue to run.
Okay. Actually, I have
One more.
couple more. Efflorescence.
Efflorescence is a.
I just love saying that word.
Yeah, just try spelling it. Efflorescence is, I always tell clients, it's something that us as home inspectors zero in on. It's a salt substrate. It's the byproduct of the making of block. And what happens is when block experiences moisture and then dries and gets wet, dries and gets wet, the salt is pushed to the surface, which is the efflorescence. For me, it's a quick picture of saying your foundation is having moisture exposure to a level that it's forcing the salt out, which means water is collecting against the house.
Okay. You said you do about 5% of pre-listing inspections and 95% of post.
Correct, yes, sir.
But a pre-listing inspection is not always as complete, is it, as the post inspection, unless the seller wants it to be?
Pre-listings, it can range. There's times where I just go in and do foundation reviews, look at units, stuff like that. Or it is, hey, come do a full-out home inspection. I want to know everything that's wrong with my house.
Right.
A lot of times, and I just did one the other day over in Seven Lakes for a lovely family out of Cary. Unfortunately, the parents had passed away. They had inherited the home and had no idea what was going on with it. And so they asked me to come through, and they said they want to know every single thing because they're at the point where it's like, hey, do we keep this? Do we rent it? Do we sell it? Do we move down here to it? And, and never being in the home, they didn't know what they were getting involved with. Right. There's other times where it's like, yeah, the house is built in the late 70s, early 80s. We do have some cracks on the walls. Right. Can you go through the crawl space and tell us if we have any structural issues that we need to take care of?
Right.
So yeah, the pre-listing inspections can range in pricing and level of detail required.
Yeah, smart sellers on a home that has some age on it, it's the best money they can spend to protect their investment and prepare them for. It helps them price a home correctly. It helps them prepare for whatever negotiation may come up. And most importantly, it manages their expectations rather than just having a pie in the sky. Well, I'm going to put my house on the market because my neighbor sold their house in 2 weeks, And of course, the homes are 30 years apart in age, and one's a two-story and one's a ranch. But people make those quick hit comparisons that are not really founded in anything other than feelings.
Well, yeah, I'm guilty of it. You know, you sold our most recent house that we had
Yep.
sold, and
Yep.
you know, we had this idea of it, you know, we had this much, and even before we put it on the market, we were already allocating how we were spending all this money we were going to get.
Right.
Reality comes in, and it's like, oh, well, I guess we can't get that, and I guess we can't get that. And thank God, from our standpoint, the home inspection wasn't anything
Right.
catastrophic. But if you do start hitting a few of those issues, now all of a sudden that money that you were spending is dropping and dropping and dropping, and the joy of selling a lot of the times now becomes the misery of selling. The pre-listing inspection helps center that, because from a realtor standpoint, you can position and price it properly.
Right.
From the seller's standpoint, it brings in the realization of what they're actually selling.
Right.
You know, because right now when we sold our house, it was all the happy memories and look at all the great things we did to it. It's all the stuff that you don't do that takes away the value.
Yeah.
And knowing what that is very important.
You know, it's interesting. You have 3 young children. Well, they're teenagers down to 7.
Yes, sir.
And your parents had a bad experience with a home inspection. So your experience takes from one generation to the next, which means that you have a degree of empathy when you go into a property, when you're working with buyers, let's say, or sellers, to help them get from here to there, and you understand their issues. That's a valuable asset to have, and not everybody does that.
Well, and that's where, you know, I take a lot of pride. I try to take pride in explaining.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about I have a 2-hour window, and when that 2 hours up is I'm gone.
Right.
You know, I've talked to clients for an hour and a half after the inspection.
And months after their purchase.
Oh yeah, well, I still get phone calls from people.
I can attest to that.
You know, trying to get them to understand, and for me, there's an immense satisfaction when someone does call me back and ask me questions, because it tells me what I'd done for them on the inspection was valuable to them, but
Yeah.
they also respected what I said, and if I can help them further, I'd love to do it. I always, my tagline when I finish the inspection is, I don't have a taillight service. So once you can't see my taillights, you can't get up with me. Call me at any time. My service doesn't end just because you moved into the house. You run into something, call me. You know, I'll try to get you the answers the best and quickest I can.
You're on Facebook,
Yes, sir.
social media, under Family First Home Inspections, and your website.
It's www.familyfirsthomeinspectionservices.com.
Pretty intuitive. And people can reach you directly at 919-545-7500.
Yep.
Sounds like an IBM number. It's a business number. You've had that for a long time?
Yeah, I've had it for probably 22 years
Yeah,
now.
don't change it. It's a good number to have. Tim, it's been great. We always have occasion to call you, and sometimes, by the way, I've called you without having an inspection to order, but having how many times have I sent you pictures? Could you identify the age of this for me or that for me? So I can better educate my clients, and you're available to do that as well.
Absolutely. As I said, my goal when I got into this was to help.
Yeah.
And helping isn't charging; it's providing information, and
Right.
I love doing it.
Yeah, it shows. You're a great spokesperson. Tim Skibitsky, Family First Home Inspection Services. I know I'll be seeing you down the road. This is All Things Moore County. Have a great week.